Hey guys, my name's Nathan O'Neill. I'm on staff here at Grace with our AV team. And so today I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about some differences you might see from an audio perspective when you're dealing with a smaller band or a stripped down set. And so we'll take instrument by instrument and deal with those, but I want to give you some general principles that you might see. And so the first thing that you're going to notice is that you're dealing with different instruments. So you might have more instruments that you don't normally work with, or fewer instruments than you're used to dealing with, and so we'll talk about those differences. The second principle is that you'll need to be aware of your low end sound and how that bounces with your high end sound and how it's different from a normal set. And then finally, you're going to need to be able to fill space more. So we'll give you some tips on how to do that well. Hope you find this helpful. So when you're dealing with drums in a stripped back set, you've got a few options. If you are using a full drum set, you might consider using hot rods or brushes to reduce the overall volume, get a different sound. You also might consider using just a kick, snare, and a hi-hat to reduce the overall volume of that kit. And your other option is to use a more acoustic instrument like a djembe or a cajon. And for those, the biggest thing to consider is that you need to capture the low end and the high end. And so to capture the low end, placing the mic underneath the djembe and at the back of the cajon works best, and to capture the high-end sound, miking the top of the djembe and the front of the cajon works best. And just overall, for drums and a more reduced set, we're looking to bring them down in the mix. They don't need to have as much presence overall. So when you're considering your keys and your bass in a mix, these are going to be the instruments that are most important for filling in the low end and bringing a balance between your low-end sound and your high-end sound in a stripped-down set. So for your bass channel, if you're running a high and a low, or a fret and a low channel, you're going to want to consider using less of the high channel than you would normally, and consider using more of the low end. And we were looking for a really clean, full, round bass sound. We don't want a whole lot of fret noise in there. And for your keyboard and your EQ, just consider using more low end or taking out less of the low end. And really the goal of these two instruments is to build the foundation for your mix in a stripped down set. When you're thinking about acoustic instruments, there's a few things you want to consider as well. When dealing with an acoustic guitar in a normal mix, you're going to take out a lot of the low end and a lot of the mid-range sounds. And it's going to lean almost toward a percussive element in your mix. For a stripped down set, you're going to want to add a lot of that tone back in to help drive that sound in the mix. And so you're going to want to consider taking out less of the mids, less of the lows, and even boosting the lows in some situations. For stringed instruments, the biggest thing to consider is how you are going to get the sound. So the primary option is using a pickup. If your campus has one of those, it's going to be less susceptible to feedback than the microphone, so that's your first option. But if you don't have one, a condenser mic does a great job of picking up that sound and getting a lot of the tone. And so if you have both, a great option is to use the microphone and the pickup in conjunction with each other, and just feel free to experiment with levels on those and some EQ to find a good balance of tone and volume without experiencing feedback. So the most important thing we want to consider in all of our mixes is our vocals. We believe that the words that we sing are what lead us in our worship, and so we want to make sure that we keep those at the front of our mixes. So that means bringing up the volume to make sure that the vocals sit above or in front of the rest of the instruments. But sometimes, especially in a small set, you will run into those vocals coming across as harsh. And so you might want to consider adding some effects like reverb or delay to soften those vocals, and even to fill in some space in your mix that will be left open in a small set. And you might also want to consider your pads and backing tracks. Those who do a really good job of helping level out your mix to fill in those spaces, and so consider boosting those in your mix as well. So hopefully these tips have been helpful for you when you're considering audio for a small band or a stripped down set. But as always, make sure that you're communicating with your campus pastor and your worship leader. But if you ever have any questions about audio or anything AV, feel free to reach out to our AV team at any time. Thank you.